Have you ever lost something precious, not because it was taken from you, but because you never realized its value? Today's story is about love, pride, betrayal, and a painful lesson that came too late. Before we begin, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who appreciates powerful stories. Also, leave a comment below and tell us, do you think people only realize someone's worth after losing them? Now let's begin. Lagos, Nigeria. The rain had started just after sunset. The expensive houses in Lekki shimmered beneath the streetlights as droplets tapped rhythmically against glass windows and parked cars. Inside one of those luxurious homes, a woman stood silently at the entrance. Her name was Amara Okonkwo, 38 years old, elegant, intelligent, calm, and completely invisible to the man she had spent 15 years loving. In her right hand was a small overnight bag. In her left hand was a set of keys. She stared at the living room ahead. The sight before her should have shattered her. Instead, it confirmed what she had known for a long time. Her husband, Chinedu Okonkwo, sat comfortably on the sofa with another woman. They were laughing, relaxed, comfortable, as if the house belonged to them, as if Amara's presence didn't matter. The young woman wore one of Chinedu's shirts. A half-empty wine glass sat on the coffee table. The atmosphere revealed everything. Neither of them noticed Amara immediately. She stood there quietly, watching, not because she needed proof, but because she wanted to remember this moment. The exact second she stopped making excuses for him. Finally, Chinedu looked up. His smile vanished. The room became silent. Amara. The other woman quickly sat upright. But Amara didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't throw anything. She simply looked at her husband. For years she had imagined what she would say if this day ever came. Now she realized she had nothing left to say. The words had died long ago. Amara, wait! Chinedu began. She placed the house keys on the table. The soft metallic sound echoed through the room. Then she looked at him one last time. Not with anger. Not with hatred. But with disappointment. The kind of disappointment that comes when someone destroys something valuable and doesn't even realize it. I'm leaving, she said softly. The other woman looked relieved. Chinedu looked confused. He had expected drama. He had expected tears. He had expected a fight. Instead, he was receiving silence. And silence frightened him far more. Can we talk about this? He asked. Amara smiled sadly. Chinedu, we stopped talking years ago. Then she turned and walked away. The front door closed behind her. And just like that, 15 years of marriage ended. Not with a storm, but with a whisper. What Chinedu did not know was that this wasn't the beginning of the end. It was the end of something that had already been dying for years. Because long before another woman entered the picture, Amara had already disappeared from her husband's eyes. As her taxi moved through the wet Lagos streets, memories flooded her mind. She remembered meeting Chinedu at the University of Lagos. Back then he was ambitious but struggling. He had dreams bigger than his bank account. Everyone admired his confidence. Very few noticed his weaknesses. Amara noticed them. And she helped him. Not because she expected anything in return, but because she believed in him. While other students spent evenings socializing, Amara and Chinedu spent nights discussing business ideas. She analyzed markets. She reviewed financial models. She corrected flaws in his plans. She challenged his assumptions. Many of the ideas people later praised Chinedu for had actually started during those conversations. But Amara never cared about recognition. She only cared about seeing him succeed. Years later, when Chinedu launched his logistics company, she was there. When investors rejected him, she encouraged him. When cash flow problems threatened the business, she created strategies that kept the company alive. When competitors gained ground, she developed solutions. Each time the company survived a crisis, people congratulated Chinedu. And every time, he accepted the praise alone. At first, Amara didn't mind. Marriage wasn't a competition. His success felt like their success. But slowly something changed. The more successful Chinedu became, the less he seemed to notice her. When journalists interviewed him, he called himself self-made. When business partners praised his brilliance, he never mentioned her contributions. When friends visited, he introduced her as, "My wife. She takes care of the home." Nothing more. Nothing less. No mention of her education. No mention of her achievements. No mention of her sacrifices. Over time, people began assuming Amara had no career, no ambitions, no expertise, and Chinita never corrected them. The painful part wasn't that strangers underestimated her. The painful part was that her husband allowed it. One evening at a corporate event, a wealthy businessman asked Amara what she did for a living. Before she could answer, Chinita laughed. "Oh, she manages the house." The table laughed politely. Amara forced a smile. But something broke inside her that night. Because she wasn't just a housewife. She held a master's degree in economics. She had consulted for multinational companies. She had developed business frameworks that generated millions in revenue. Yet the man who knew her best reduced her entire existence to a domestic role. That night, lying awake beside him, Amara stared at the ceiling. For the first time, she asked herself a terrifying question. What if the person who should know me best doesn't know me at all? Years passed. The distance between them grew. Chinita became busier, more successful, more admired, and more arrogant. Meanwhile, Amara quietly built something of her own. Something nobody knew about. Not even her husband. Every morning after Chinita left for work, she entered a private office in Victoria Island. There she worked with a small team of analysts, researchers, economists, data scientists. Together they developed innovative business intelligence systems, predictive market tools, financial optimization models, corporate strategy frameworks. Slowly, quietly, a company was born, Navarro Analytics. And while Chinita chased publicity, Amara chased excellence. One day, that hidden world would change everything. But for now, as her taxi disappeared into the rainy Lagos night, she focused on only one thing. Freedom. For the first time in years, she wasn't running away. She was finally walking toward herself. And somewhere behind her, in that expensive mansion, Chinita still believed he had lost an ordinary wife. He had no idea he had just lost the most extraordinary person in his life. And the truth would soon shake everything he thought he knew. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Stories like this remind us of the lessons life teaches when we least expect them. Now let's continue. The first few weeks after Amara left were surprisingly easy for Chinita. At least, that's what he told himself. He threw himself into work. He attended meetings, signed contracts, hosted dinners, posted photographs on social media. To everyone watching, his life seemed perfect. In fact, many people assumed he was happier than ever. The young woman he had been seeing, Adiz, began spending more time with him. She was beautiful, charming, and always impressed by his success. At first, Chinita enjoyed the attention. Unlike Amara, Adiz never questioned his decisions. She laughed at all his jokes. She praised every business move. She treated him like a king. For a while, it felt refreshing. Then reality arrived. One evening, Chinita returned home after an exhausting day. The electricity generator had developed a fault. A major client had postponed a contract. His finance team had discovered discrepancies in a quarterly report. Frustrated, he entered the house hoping for advice. Instead, Adiz was busy scrolling through social media. "What do you think about restructuring our distribution network in the north?" he asked casually. She looked up. "What distribution network?" Chinita paused. He explained. Halfway through his explanation, he realized she wasn't listening. Her attention had already returned to her phone. For the first time, he noticed something strange. He wasn't having a conversation. He was speaking into empty space. Days later, another problem emerged. A major proposal landed on his desk. Normally, whenever complex business decisions arose, he somehow found clarity. Now he stared at the documents for hours. The solution felt just beyond reach. Something was missing. For years he had unknowingly relied on a voice that challenged him, questioned him, improved his thinking. Amara's voice. Without her, even familiar problems felt heavier. Yet pride prevented him from admitting it. Months passed. Then the company's performance began slipping. Not dramatically, just enough to create concern. Several strategies that had worked brilliantly in the past suddenly stopped producing results. Competitors gained ground. Margins tightened. Investors started asking difficult questions. One afternoon, Chinidu called a meeting with his executive team. The atmosphere was tense. Charts covered the conference room screen. Sales trends. Market projections. Regional forecasts. Everyone had opinions. Nobody had solutions. As the meeting dragged on, frustration filled the room. Then one of the analysts spoke. "Sir, have you seen the new market prediction model from Navarro Analytics?" The room immediately became interested. Another executive nodded. "I've heard about them." "So have I." "They're becoming influential. Their forecasts have been incredibly accurate." Chinita frowned. "Who are they?" The room fell silent. Several executives exchanged surprised glances. One finally answered. "Sir, they're one of the most respected consulting firms in West Africa." That answer irritated him. How had he never heard of them? Over the next few weeks, the name appeared everywhere. Navarro Analytics. Clients mentioned them. Partners mentioned them. Competitors mentioned them. Their reports seemed to influence major business decisions across multiple industries. One morning, curiosity finally overcame him. He instructed his assistant to arrange a meeting. 3 days later, a detailed company profile arrived on his desk. He opened it casually, then froze. His eyes narrowed. He looked again. Surely he was mistaken. But the name remained there. Founder and Chief Executive Officer. Amara Navarro Conquo. His hands trembled. For several seconds he simply stared. The words refused to make sense. This had to be another Amara. It couldn't be his wife. His wife had never mentioned building a consulting empire. His wife had never mentioned leading a team of economists. His wife had never mentioned international contracts. His wife had never mentioned patents. His wife had never mentioned any of this. As he continued reading, the shock deepened. Navarro Analytics had been founded 6 years earlier. 6 years. Not 6 months. Not after their separation. 6 years. That meant Amara had built the company while they were still married. While he slept beside her every night. While they ate at the same table. While they lived under the same roof. How was that possible? The answer came immediately. Because he had never bothered to ask. A painful silence settled over his office. For the first time, Chinidu confronted a truth he had spent years avoiding. He knew almost nothing about his wife. The realization hit harder than any business loss. He continued reading. Every page revealed something new. Industry awards. Research publications. Corporate partnerships. Speaking engagements. International recognition. The woman he thought he knew was practically a stranger. And not just any stranger. An extraordinary one. Then he reached the section that shattered him completely. The report listed several proprietary business methodologies developed by Navarro Analytics. As he read the descriptions, a strange feeling emerged. The ideas seemed familiar. Very familiar. Suddenly, memories flooded back. Late-night conversations years ago. Notebook sketches. Ideas exchanged over cups of tea. Discussions that had taken place at their dining table. Those methodologies weren't entirely new. They had been born during conversations he and Amara shared together. The difference was that she had developed them, refined them, protected them, built an empire around them, while he had forgotten those conversations ever happened. For the first time in years, Chinidu closed his office door and sat alone. No phone, no meetings, no distractions, just silence. The silence he had avoided for years. Because silence forces people to hear truths they spend their lives running from. And the truth was devastating. Amara had never been standing behind him. She had always been standing beside him. He was simply too blind to notice. That night, he drove aimlessly through Lagos, Victoria Island, Ikoyi, Lekki, places filled with memories. Everywhere he looked, he saw traces of her. A restaurant where they celebrated their first anniversary. A bookstore she loved. A cafe where she spent hours reading economic journals. Memories he had taken for granted. Suddenly, his success felt strangely empty. Because for years he believed his greatest achievement was building a company. Now he realized his greatest blessing had been a woman. And he had lost her. Not because another man stole her. Not because she stopped loving him. But because he never truly saw her. Yet life wasn't finished teaching Chinidu its lesson. A far greater revelation was waiting. One that would force him to confront the full magnitude of what he had thrown away. And it would happen in front of hundreds of people. On an international stage. A place where the entire world could see what he had failed to see for 15 years. Before we continue, take a moment to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Stories like this remind us that respect, appreciation, and love are never things we should take for granted. Also, leave a comment below. Do you think Chinidu deserves a second chance? Now let's continue. 3 months later. Abuja, Nigeria. The city's skyline glowed beneath the morning sun as luxury vehicles lined the entrance of the International Business Leadership Summit. It was one of the most prestigious events in Africa. CEOs, government officials, investors, economists, industry leaders. The brightest minds from across the continent had gathered in one place. Chinidu had attended many conferences before. Normally he enjoyed them. Today felt different. The invitation sitting in his hand carried a name he couldn't stop thinking about. Keynote speaker, Dr. Amara Navarro, founder and CEO, Navarro Analytics. His heart beat faster. Since discovering the truth about her company, he had tried several times to contact her. His calls went unanswered. His messages remained unread. His emails received polite responses from assistants. Never from Amara herself. It was as if she had quietly stepped into a new life where he no longer existed. And perhaps she had. Inside the conference hall, hundreds of guests filled the seats. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. People discussed market trends, investment opportunities, economic forecasts. But one name dominated nearly every conversation. Amara Navarro. She's brilliant. I heard her firm's predictions outperformed international consultants. Her work is being adopted by companies across Africa. She's changing the industry. Every compliment felt like a small knife twisting inside Chinidu's chest. Not because he was jealous. Because he realized he should have been saying those things years ago. The lights dimmed. The audience settled. Then the moderator stepped onto the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker hardly needs an introduction. The room erupted into applause. The giant screen behind the stage displayed her photograph. Confident, professional, respected, admired. The same woman he once described as someone who simply looked after the home. Then she appeared. And for a moment, Chinidu forgot how to breathe. Amara walked onto the stage with calm confidence. She wore a simple but elegant navy blue suit. No flashy jewelry. No dramatic entrance. No need to impress anyone. The room's respect for her was already obvious. The applause grew louder. Several people stood. Then more stood. Within seconds, hundreds of attendees were giving her a standing ovation. Chinidu remained frozen in his seat. His eyes never left her. Because he was witnessing something extraordinary. Not her success. Not her recognition. Not her influence. He was witnessing who she had always been. The world was simply seeing it now. As she began speaking, the room became completely silent. Her voice was calm, clear, confident. Every sentence carried authority. Every idea commanded attention. For nearly an hour, she spoke about leadership, innovation, economic growth, the future of African business. The audience hung on to every word. People took notes. Executives nodded. Investors exchanged impressed glances. Several times the room erupted into applause. Meanwhile, Chinidu sat motionless. His mind drifted backward through time. He remembered nights when she shared ideas similar to these. Moments he barely listened. Conversations he interrupted. Insights he dismissed. The brilliance everyone admired today had existed all along. He had simply refused to notice. Then something happened that completely broke him. During the question and answer session, a young entrepreneur stood. Dr. Navarro, she said, who has been the greatest influence on your professional journey? The room waited. Chinidu waited. Part of him hoped she would mention him. Perhaps not as a husband, but as someone who had once been important. Amara smiled gently. Then she answered, my greatest influence was adversity. The audience listened carefully. Sometimes life places you in environments where your value is ignored. Those experiences can either break you or reveal your strength. In my case, they revealed mine. The room applauded, but Chinita felt as though the words were directed straight at him. Because they were true. The years she spent feeling unseen had not destroyed her. They had transformed her. When the conference ended, dozens of people surrounded her. Executives, journalists, investors, government officials. Everyone wanted a few moments of her attention. Chinita watched from a distance. Suddenly he understood something. For years he had believed she needed him. The truth was that she never did. She chose him. And there is a world of difference between being needed and being chosen. Eventually the crowd began to thin. Amara stepped into a private lounge area behind the conference hall. For several minutes, Chinita debated with himself. Then he followed. This might be his last opportunity. The woman sitting by the window looked peaceful. Strong. Content. Not angry. Not bitter. Simply free. When she noticed him approaching, her expression remained calm. No shock. No hostility. No sadness. Just calmness. The kind of calmness that comes when old wounds have finally healed. Hello, Chinidu, she said. Hearing his name from her lips after months of silence nearly shattered him. Amara. Neither spoke for several seconds. The distance between them felt much larger than the few feet separating them. Finally, he broke the silence. You were incredible. She smiled politely. Thank you. I didn't know. The words escaped before he could stop them. Amara looked at him carefully. No, she replied softly. You didn't. The honesty stung. Because there was no anger in it. Only truth. And truth is often more painful than anger. Chinita lowered his eyes. I'm sorry. She remained silent. He continued. I'm sorry for every time I ignored you. I'm sorry for every achievement I took credit for. I'm sorry for every moment I made you feel invisible. His voice shook. For years I thought I understood success. A tear formed in his eye. But I didn't even recognize greatness when it was sitting across from me at the dinner table. For the first time, emotion appeared in Amara's eyes. Not resentment. Not triumph. Just sadness. The sadness of remembering what once was. Then she asked quietly, Do you know what hurt the most? Chinita shook his head. It wasn't the betrayal. His chest tightened. It wasn't even the other woman. She paused. The thing that hurt most was realizing I could disappear while sitting right beside you. The words hit harder than anything he had ever heard. Because deep inside, he knew she was right. She had been disappearing for years. And he never noticed. A long silence followed. Then Chinidu asked the question he had carried for months. Did you ever stop loving me? Amara looked out the window. The Abuja skyline stretched across the horizon. When she finally spoke, her voice was almost a whisper. No. The answer surprised him. She turned back toward him. I never stopped loving you. Hope briefly appeared inside him. Then came the rest. I left because I loved myself too. The words hung in the air. Simple. Powerful. Final. I stayed for years hoping you would see me. Tears filled her eyes. But eventually I realized something. You cannot force someone to value what they refuse to see. Chinita lowered his head. Every regret. Every mistake. Every ignored moment came crashing down at once. Not because he didn't love her, but because he never showed it in the ways that mattered. And sometimes love without appreciation becomes another form of neglect. Amara stood. The conversation was ending. So was a chapter of their lives. For a brief moment they looked at each other. Not as enemies. Not as strangers. But as two people who once shared a dream. Then she offered him a small smile. I hope you find peace, Chinidu. And I hope you learn from this. With those words, she turned and walked away. This time, he didn't try to stop her. Because for the first time, he understood. Love is not possession. Love is not control. Love is not convenience. Love is seeing another person's worth while you still have the chance. And sometimes the greatest punishment in life is not losing someone. It is realizing too late who they truly were. As Amara disappeared into the crowd, Chinidu remained standing alone. Yet something had changed. For the first time in many years, he wasn't blaming anyone else. He wasn't making excuses. He wasn't running from the truth. He was finally facing himself. And that was where his real journey would begin. And so, while Amara continued building a life filled with purpose, dignity, and success, Chinidu began the harder task, becoming a better man than the one who had lost her. Not every story ends with reconciliation. Not every mistake can be undone. But every mistake can teach us something. Perhaps the lesson of this story is simple. Appreciate people while they are still beside you. Listen while they are still speaking. Value them while they are still choosing you. Because one day, the person you overlook may become the person you spend the rest of your life missing. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe, like, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And tell us in the comments, what was the biggest lesson you learned from Amara and Chinita's story? Until next time, remember, the rarest treasures in life are often the ones we see every day, and therefore risk taking for granted.